All right, today we're diving into a single day in history that completely redefined an empire and honestly sent shockwaves all around the world. We're talking about the Battle of Adwa. It's this amazing story of unbelievable courage, just brilliant leadership, and a victory that, get this, almost everyone at the time thought was completely, utterly impossible.
So you got to understand the mindset back then, right? It's the late 19th century. Italy, this modern European empire with all its industrial power and military tech, looks over at Ethiopia, one of the last free nations in Africa, and just sees an easy win. You know, in their minds and really in the minds of a lot of people in Europe, it was a done deal, a simple, straightforward conquest.
And that right there is where this story gets really interesting. Because that whole assumption, that idea of an easy victory, well, it was about to come crashing down against the mountains of Ethiopia. And what happened next would become one of the most jaw-dropping military upsets of the entire colonial age. Okay, so to really get what was at stake here, we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This whole period was called the Scramble for Africa, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. European powers were just aggressively carving up the entire continent for themselves, drawing lines on maps like it was nothing, with almost zero thought for the actual people who lived there.
I mean, think about this for a second. At this point, pretty much the entire continent was under colonial rule. But then there was Ethiopia. It just stood apart. This ancient empire, a real beacon of independence in a world that was being colonized left and right. And for Italy, well, Ethiopia was the final, glittering prize they just had to have.
And Italy definitely came prepared. Or, at least they thought they did. They showed up with a modern army, decked out with all the latest rifles, all the best artillery. They marched in with this just overwhelming confidence, this belief that they were technologically and culturally superior. They were, without a doubt, the Goliath in this story. But as the old story goes, Goliath was about to meet David. See, the threat of this invasion didn't shatter Ethiopia. Nope, it did the exact opposite. It united it. And that incredible unity, it was forged by two really extraordinary leaders. So first, you have Emperor Menelik II. He sends out this call to arms, and it just echoes across his huge, diverse empire. And this is key. It wasn't just one ethnic group fighting back. It was the whole nation. He was so smart about it. He used tradition, their shared faith, and he was a master negotiator with all these powerful regional leaders, some of whom were actually his old rivals. He brought them all together to face this one big common enemy. People came from the north, the south, the east, the west. Warriors put aside all their old differences and marched together under one flag to defend their home. It was a massive, totally unprecedented mobilization. And right there alongside the emperor was his wife, Empress Taytu Betul. And let me tell you, she was no spectator, just watching from the sidelines. Not at all. She was a brilliant military strategist in her own right, a totally fierce leader. She actually commanded her own forces on the battlefield and was a huge part of the planning. Her advice was absolutely vital. This quote says it all, doesn't it? A woman of fire. She was the real heart of the resistance, this powerful voice that just inspired everyone and absolutely refused to even think about surrendering.
So this is it. This is what it all comes down to. All the planning, all the marching, all the politics, it was all leading to one single decisive showdown in the mountains of Adwa. And the speed of this battle is just wild. It's truly astonishing. Okay, so as the sun comes up, the Ethiopian forces, we're talking nearly 100,000 fighters, they use their incredible intelligence network and their deep knowledge of the land to launch this massive, perfectly timed attack. The Italians, they're stumbling around with bad maps and they get lured right into these narrow valleys. It's a trap. By mid-morning, bam, they're completely surrounded, and by noon, we're talking just a few hours later, it's over, done. That modern, super confident Italian army was completely and utterly broken. Yeah, those three words right there, outnumbered, overnumbered, overwhelmed. That perfectly captures what happened to the invading army. I mean, the Italians came in expecting to be the ones doing all the overpowering, right? And suddenly, they were the ones being outsmarted, outfought, and just totally overwhelmed by the force and the spirit of the Ethiopian army. The tables had been turned big time. And, the dust had barely even settled there at Adwa, but the news, the shockwaves from this battle were already starting to spread way, way beyond the mountains of Ethiopia. Back in Europe, people just could not believe it. complete and total disbelief. An African army had just handed a modern European army a decisive defeat. It shattered the whole myth of European invincibility, the very idea that fueled all of colonialism. So while Europe was reeling from the shock, Ethiopia stood tall and proud, its freedom secured. And that really is the true legacy of Adwa. It became so much more than just a military win. It became this incredibly powerful symbol of resistance for colonized people all over the world. It was proof that the colonial powers weren't invincible gods. They were just men, and they could be fought, and they could be beaten. It really lit a flame of hope across Africa and for people of African descent everywhere. So, okay, what do we take away from this incredible story today? Because the victory at Adwa isn't just some dusty moment in a history book. It actually offers us some pretty timeless lessons about what real strength and resilience look like. When you boil it all down, it really comes to two powerful truths. First, unity is strength. Ethiopia's victory was only possible because all these different groups, this diverse nation, came together as one. That was their most powerful weapon. And second, courage can literally change the destiny of a nation. This battle wasn't just won with strategy. It was won by the unbelievable courage of everyday people fighting for their homes, for their freedom, for their future. And that courage changed the course of history, period. And so that leaves us with this question to think about. In a world that still has its own share of seemingly impossible odds, what does Adwa's story teach us? It's this powerful reminder of what's possible when people unite with a single purpose and are armed with courage. A pretty amazing lesson from history for all of us today. Thanks for joining me for this one.